So, Leo, it's our season finale. How are you feeling?
You know, Toby, gotta say I'm feeling at least $100.
So, are you ready to start shooting? Leo? Hello?
Toby!
Hello?
Toby! I'm in the computer! Toby! In the computer! Toby, I'm in the computer! A pal is a wonderful thing. I'm Leo Rapotto, and for one last time, welcome along to another award-nominated episode of The Struggle. On the program tonight, Price protests people, Succession reaches its summit, and some wiggly worms. But first, only 222 years after the British first set up camp on Bunurong country, the colony of Victoria is finally set to have a treaty with its occupied peoples. The treaty process will focus on addressing the past, and specifically doesn't take anything away from anyone else. Well, nothing except your backyard! And your dignity if you're seriously still peddling that crap. At the core of it, this bill makes it mandatory to consult First Nations Victorians when legislating policy that directly affects them. If yourself at home aren't sure what this treaty really is for, it might help to conceptualise it like this. Imagine your football team had been losing for years. Then one day, the board comes to you and the fans saying, "Do you lot want a say in how we're running this club?" Stuff like what players to sign, how to approach tactics, building infrastructure, stuff like that. Because nobody knows the true identity of a club more than its members, right? Maybe you're still thinking that that level of influence should be kept for the CEO, but now imagine that that same club's management had spent the last 2 centuries committing cultural genocide against its fans. And yet, those fans kept getting back up, supporting their community, fighting proudly for survival and acknowledgement, all in the face of literal Nazis? You'd have to either be a flog or a footballing invalid not to want to give those supporters a say in running the club. All that being said, Victoria's treaty is still a wee bit more complicated than a football club's communist cultural revolution. But most relevantly to the average Victorian, it'll involve 6 main points of legislation. First, the existing advisory body is to be permanently enshrined and renamed Gelongwal, tip of the spear. Gelongwal will be consulted by the state government on any First Nations relevant policy. Now, I always operated under the assumption that all government policy was based on stakeholder consultation, but it's reassuring to know that, at least in this case, the bare minimum of due diligence is now law. The body will also advocate for the adoption of place names from our local language, hopefully meaning less airports west and more Moorabbins. The bill also calls for a Rudd-style in-Parliament apology from the Victorian Government to First Nations people, as well as the establishment of truth-telling and accountability bodies. The reconciliation process is to be bolstered too, with classes from prep to year 10 that would more accurately discuss the impact of colonisation on our First Peoples. Anemic private schools, the Greens, gave the bill itself their unamended support, but state opposition leader Brad Batten rejected this opportunity for Victorian reconciliation, saying,
"We already know that there's been a vote put to the Victorian people and the vote was no for the voice to Parliament, and this will be effectively reinstating that."
Mr Batten there confusing the voice to Parliament with the voice to Victorian Parliament, that being the First Nations Assembly, which was legislated without a fuss in 2019. What has been consistently rejected in the time since is the Victorian Liberal Party. But we don't punch down on this show. Anyway, in 1871, Ballarat was the shimmering jewel of the Commonwealth, as load after load of shimmering bullion was shipped and schlepped from its shimmering and porous goldfields. And today, that scar of the shiny metallic industry that built colonial Australia has burst open again, spitting out viscous flecks of golden blood into the mouths and wallets of West Australian prospectors. Pre-Federation resource correspondent Mia has this story.
The gold rush is back. Everybody forests through their grandmother's heirloom jewellery and crack into that mint coin collection because gold has doubled in price since 2020, now priced at $5,400 per ounce according to the ABC Bullion Tracker. Full-time gold prospector Brent "My Precious" Shannon made news headlines in 2020 when he found 2 gold nuggets worth almost $350,000, which now in the year 2025 is worth almost $700,000. Shannon noted the rise of interest in gold over the past 12 months, seeing a boom in people cashing in their precious objects. However, John Moneybags Mills, an equity analyst at Morningstar, says that society's yearn for Sovereign Hill excursions is actually because of turbulence in other aspects of the global market, as people usually tend to run to gold when the stock market crashes. And it's not just people. Banks are investing more and more into gold as they shiver at the mention of Trump's tariffs. So in this circumstance, gold isn't really a money-making side hustle as it is a safe haven asset. However, despite that, Jason Cornish, the president of Prospectors and Miners Association Victoria, says he's got big names like Sweden and France sliding into his DMs saying that they want to see what's in our pot of gold. So while gold might not produce any actual real income, you can still pack up the car for some family fun up at Sovereign Hill to secure yourself a chunk of this recession indicator. Or just start investing in shovels.
Notable Galilean Jesus Christ was killed yesterday by United States Special Forces in a botched coup of heaven. A source from inside the pearly gates told our reporter heaven maintains their commitment to a nuclear project in spite of stateside pressure. While we Australians believe our politicians are here to represent us, their loyal constituents, sometimes the actions and positions they take feel a bit left or right of field. With the March for White Australia eliciting an uproarious response from MP Bob Katter, we took it upon ourselves to remind our audience what politicians have actually said over the years.
How good is Australia?
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny.
Let there be 1,000 blossoms bloom.
I grew up in a council house.
Please explain.
G'day everyone, hello.
Oh, it's lovely to have you.
Oh, how are you? Oh, nice to see you. It's been a while actually, hasn't it? Yes, yes.
Oh yeah, and just have fun with it.
How good is Australia? Well, I think Australia is the best country in the world, I really do.
I do not recall.
I've always believed in miracles. I love this country so much, I did all I could to lead it.
Are you Lebanon? Now, don't say that, because I punch blokes in the mouth for saying that. This is a free country. My family have been in here for generations.
In this country, we have a Prime Minister whose name is Albanese and a Foreign Minister whose name is Wong, but I don't necessarily think that excludes...
Because that irritates me, and I punch blokes in the mouth for saying that.
I do not recall.
How many houses do you own? It's a classic.
Hello. I was lucky enough to buy an apartment.
I actually grew up in social housing.
Family have been here for generations. We built this great country off of our backs, okay? We are true blue Australians.
Is it okay to be white? Please explain.
What would I do for Australia? Well, in this country, if you have a go, you get a go. That being said, I don't hold a hose, mate.
What are my best tips for managing people? Well, they just do what I ask them to do, like with matters of $140 million.
Stop making speeches.
Why won't you answer the question?
Did we say
it
like this?
Reactionary politicians saying the quiet part out loud isn't new, but it is consistent. Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price recently found herself in hot water over remarks made about Indian Australians and Labor's voter base. We thought we'd clear the air, and by clear we mean make it messier. So now welcome to the desk Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price and Liberal HR superstar Susan Leach. Welcome both of you. Now, Senator, you recently suggested that Labor favours Indian immigration because South Asian migrants are more likely to garner them votes. For context here, There are over 1 million Australians with Indian ancestry, and pollster Cost Samaras estimates that roughly 85% of them do vote Labor, but you still stand by your comments?
Of course I do. It's obvious. Labour stacking the decks with voters who thank them at the ballot box. It's like importing fans to cheer for your own team.
You do understand why some voters might see these remarks as racial scapegoating, don't you?
Oh, please. I have plenty of Indian friends and I get around the cricket. What's the problem?
The problem is you. What Jacinta means is that migration policy needs to serve the national interest, not take a narrow partisan advantage. Indian Australians are a valued contributing community.
The comments prompted panic from the coalition. Senior colleagues distanced themselves, others demanded an apology. I mean, the party's since removed you from the front bench. Surely now's the time to make rank?
I'm still not apologizing. Saying sorry would admit that I was wrong and I'm not. The media just twists everything and I will not be silenced.
You are wrong, and you will be silenced. What Jacinta means is that she regrets if people misunderstood her. She should have been more clear, and she should have been more respectful. And she will apologise from the heart and the backbench.
So with more than 1 million Indian Australians under fire from an unapologetic former frontbencher, perhaps this isn't quite the conspiracy Jacinta suggests. No apology, public support fracturing, and one very tired Suzanne Leach. Thank you both.
Can I just say again, some of the best Uber drivers are Indians?
Behen should. You cannot be out here saying things like this and you wonder why you're on the backbench. I am done with you.
Could use a lassie after that. Welcome in. Now, much is made of capital letters, but what of the lesser known capital numbers? The big 3, the scalene 5, and even the 9 of discomfort. We'll have more on capital numbers later in the show, but for now, trams! Melbourne is chock full of them, and yet somehow we've never thought to pit them against each other in tram-to-tram combat. Lucky for us, those droopy-eyed Europeans have been running tram championships for years, and much like Eurovision, they're finally letting Aussie tram drivers compete too. To gauge the public response to our first ever global tram slam, we sent Violette down to the depot.
The newest sporting championship hitting worldwide arenas may finally give Australia an athletic export that isn't men in Speedos. That's right, just this weekend was the inaugural World Tram Driver Championships. Melbourne's only tourist attraction, being what any other city would call regular public transport, is finally being put to good use with this street-shaking event. Have you been keeping up with the World Tram Driver Championships?
No.
Why not?
I have no idea what it is.
Nah, not heard about it.
But you're about to get on a tram?
Yep.
No.
What?
No, I don't. Oh, yes, I did see that on Facebook.
Where is it?
Vienna.
Vienna. Oh, okay.
It's not too bad of a commute.
Yeah. Quick flight.
Just jump on a tram.
Not exactly front page news.
What do you mean? You're on the news.
Maybe front page of your news program.
How do you explain your complete lack of patriotism to the city of Melbourne?
I've never been one for patriotism or politics. It gets toxic at some point, whether you have good intentions or not.
Do you think the tram driving competitions will get toxic?
All sports get toxic at some point.
Like, I almost got hit by a tram that day.
We found a tram fan. What did you think?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, I am a tram fan. I always catch trams.
There's not much to driving a tram though, right? I mean, you just sort of, the track is laid out, so...
Have you driven a tram?
No.
Should we enter you in the World Tram Driver Championships?
Sure. Let's do it.
Do you think you'd win?
Yeah.
So you think you could go against every tram driver in the world as someone who's never driven a tram and win?
I think I could give it a good go, yeah. Why not? You gotta be confident.
You've got a competitor here, guys.
Yeah, if you're driving a tram, you gotta be confident, right?
Do you have any messages for our drivers off in Vienna right now?
Congratulations to both of you for competing in the championship. Good luck.
Good luck.
Yay!
Woo! Do you think this tram driver would be deserving?
He's going pretty slow at the moment. If there's no one on the tram, maybe just him, he could zoom.
Well, I guess Melbourne's tram enthusiasts have all gone to Vienna because I can't seem to find any anywhere.
Once a culture-crushing superorganism, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland has reached historic new lows in culture, economy, but not funniness. Now just as useless to the global world order as a painted-on parking spot, Jimmy Crimes joins me now via the power of satellite technology to tell us what happened today in the UK. Oh, Jimmy.
Thank you, Leo. As we all know, fun is banned in Britain and we can't have nice things. So this week we said cheerio to Deputy Prime Minister and rave Queen Angela Rayner. Rayner, a rare cabinet minister that didn't have a nanny growing up, resigned after underpaying $80,000 worth of tax on a recently purchased second home. She insists it was an honest error owing to complex arrangements around her disabled son, and was found to have acted with integrity by the PM's ethics advisor after dobbing herself in. But it's hard to brush over a cock-up like that when you're also the housing secretary. It's a big blow for the Labour government, who continue to tank in the polls and now can't ask for Angela to distract from the mess made by unpopular policies and naughty ambassadors. Moving on to the Greens, who, remembering that not all left-wing politics are yet prescribed, announced Zach Polansky as their new leader. Self-described eco-populist Polansky won 85% of the members' votes and vows to replace Labour, possibly through an alliance with jam man Jeremy Corbyn's as-yet untitled party. Replacing the government is a tall order for a party with only 4 MPs, so maybe they'll employ methods from Polansky's curious background to charm the voter base. Speaking of massive tits, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage was in America this week doing his patriotic duty of lobbying Congress against Britain over its free speech laws. Meanwhile, his party held their national conference in Brum. Not only did they celebrate free speech by platforming charming individuals such as Lucy Connolly, recently released from jail after inciting racial hatred, and RFK ally Dr. Asim Malhotra, but they also gave a sneak preview to the UK's 2026 Eurovision entrant, Mayor of Greater Lincolnshire, Andrea Jenkins, who stunned the room with her self-wrote song, Insomniac.
I'm an insomniac. I'm an insomniac.
And finally, the Scots are drinking. Shock. As ever, a normal week in politics on Normal Island.
Drama out of the AFLW over the weekend at the Windy Hill clash between Essendon and St Kilda, when partway through the third quarter, a golden crater appeared in the sky and the entire Saints lineup was raptured into the heavens. But one can hardly blame St Kilda for harnessing the power of the divine rather than traditional air travel to get around. Delayed flight times, shoddy service and rows upon rows of ugly, ugly passengers is enough to make any flight unbearable. That is, without at least $11 million of meth up the bum. One troublesome Queenslander, however, has recently discovered that our border security body just doesn't share the same guilty travel pleasures as the common man, as Ethan and Wynne earlier discussed.
A Gold Coast man was arrested with what is allegedly around $11 million worth of meth.
On September 5th, reports say he attempted to...
What? Who are you?
I'm just here to sell... Speak! Like what you guys are doing now. Scooch over. Why are there so many cameras in here?
As I was saying, attempting to sneak this methamphetamine through Brisbane's airport, but was intercepted by the Australian Border Force.
Yeah, that. You people are so obvious with your smuggling.
Yes, and these were the x-rays when running luggage checks.
And the confiscated 12 bags of meth, worth roughly $11.4 million.
Weighing at 35 kilograms. Would you know anything about it?
Is it even possible to carry that much?
Look, totally possible. Really, he sounds very incompetent. So not fit for the job at all.
So, hypothetically, how could he have done it?
Look, it's simple really. Speaking from second-hand personal experience, you could put little zip-up bags in your clothes.
Like how the guy packed his drugs into the luggage.
Yes, or putting them in little pills, passing them off as medicine. Or food. And maybe everyday items. Some choose to dissolve them in liquids as well. Or you could go the unconventional route, like stashing them in your mobility scooter. There's so many ways you could go about it.
Lots of methods to bring them in, yes. But, you know, most offenders get caught.
And of course, if the man is found guilty, the maximum penalty is life imprisonment.
35 kilos is like a lot. That's equivalent to 17,500 individual deals, each one weighing in at a street-level dose of 0.2 grams.
So for any drug dealers out there, just remember, the airport borders are actively patrolled by the AFP and ABF.
You're a cop? You have to say if you're a cop.
Almost impossible to smuggle anything in. But hey, better safe than sorry.
They will find you.
Gotta go!
Hey, where you headed off to?
Every Monday, I appear in your living rooms to yell unchecked news copy at your parents in the time-honoured tradition of the News Corp anchor. But all that could be about to change as the fate of the Murdoch empire looks to be all but sealed. As the entertainment-based non-factual news industry braces for the departure of the only man crazy enough to prefer the name Rupert to Keith, we have News.com joke writer and one-time Chris Kenny understudy Roy to bring us up to speed on News Corp's upcoming reshuffle.
Good evening, dear audience. Welcome to this week's compilation of Daddy Issues. Just earlier this month, we might have solved the biggest family issue of the century. That man, the chairman emeritus of News Corp and Fox Corporation, puppet master of conservative media, the king of tabloids, and internally humble. The original inspiration of Succession himself, Mr. Keith Rupert Murdoch, have finally solved the family problem after years of conflicts, for which of his children will become the next dictator of the Murdoch Empire. Which, by now we all know that heredity system still exists in the 21st century. The family announces that they have reached a deal that guarantees the eldest son Lachlan will retain control of his father's media empire after Rupert dies. Which, God knows when that may happen. Well, I mean, it took Prince Charles 70 years to become King Charles. Who knows how long it's going to take Lachlan to actually sit on that chair. Well, the original will written by the old man a couple of years ago said that all four out of 6 of his kids will inherit 1/4 of his wealth and shares in all his companies. Clearly, Mr. Lord of Media somehow forgets that not to make promises he can't keep, since this problem started with him trying to change the trust structure that himself said to be irrevocable. But if you think this will change Fox News Entertainment Company's right-leaning vibe, well, too bad. As far as we know, Lachlan is closer to his old right-leaning father than his young, more neutral brother, James. Ah, that explains why it has to be Lachlan. Guess old Murdoch just too afraid to see his empire go. Woke. Hey. Wait, what do you mean I'm fired? Hey, what do you mean Rupert wants me out of the show? Hey, you can't do this to me. I'm a fair, neutral...
Oh, if I wasn't already married, I'd eat that Lachlan Murdoch. While I research the address and daily routine of Sarah Murdoch, please enjoy this slew of local ads. And that's the genius of my plan, Detective. You'll never find the bodies. Not when they're buried deep in my backyard. Oh, the Australian government is set to announce a new 2035 emissions target to help keep the express service to climate change back on track for net zero by 2050. Frequent outside goer and climate scientist Amy has the story.
Yes, science!
The Climate Change Authority is expected to give the government advice on the best climate target, pushing for between 65 and 75%. While our government finds new ways to look like they care about the crisis, new research has been added to the pile of ways that climate change is screwing us over. A Johns Hopkins University study found that air pollution is increasing our risk of developing Lewy body dementia. The study found that long-term exposure triggers oxidative stress and inflammation of the brain, causing it to misfold into clumps like discoloured Play-Doh being manhandled by a toddler. With the constant talks over net zero and setting new targets over and over, I fear that all hope is lost with the Australian politicians. It seems the overexposure to air pollution has caused memory loss, as they're constantly setting targets, but always forgetting to reach them. Like visiting your nan in aged care, we have to continuously remind these politicians that no, I'm not your long-lost young lover from the 30s that your parents despised of. And yes, you have set climate targets, so actually do something about it.
Maybe Parliament House should become more like an aged care centre. Politicians can spend their time doing Sudokus, crosswords, or having music therapy to help improve their brain function. And maybe we'll actually start taking action on climate change. But until then, I'd keep your mouth and nose shut when you're outside. Just in case.
Security, have Amy Caruso exploded? After Sydney wept their way through their wettest winter in 18 years, many Melburnians have found themselves lost in a city devoid of its soul. No longer the great rainmaker. Well, if it makes you feel any better, a study from the University of Bristol and the Chinese Academy of Sciences has revealed that the rogue continent known as North America plays a far more significant role in the strength of the Asian monsoon season than previously thought. Lieutenant Anders Medicine of the Australian Meteorological Military Wing said in these clammy wet congs.
Australia just lost a major battle, one you don't even know about. North America now has the upper hand in the Asian summer monsoon season, as it heats up during the summer and pressurizes the atmosphere to create an anticyclone that moves westward towards Asia, increasing the precipitation of East Asia summer monsoon by 17% and a whopping 28% increase in the precipitation of the Indian summer monsoon. As if that's not enough for the American terrorists, researchers of this study were confident that Australia was going to be the continent to have the most dramatic effects on the Asian summer monsoon, considering its scale and proximity to the region. It's not gone well for us this year, has it? First, it was Turkey refusing to let us host the Conference of the Parties Climate Summit. Now it's the Americans cooking us out of bringing the floods to Asia. Embarrassing! Lie. I have a plan that'll take out both of our most immediate adversaries in the climate warfare. If we increase our emissions here, the dominoes of anthropogenic climate change will fall exactly where they should. So join me in my effort to show the world that you don't need geographical advantage or thermodynamic phenomena to influence the global climate. Let's outpollute every—
There he is! You have been found guilty of committing climate war crimes and have been sentenced to death by firing squad.
No, wait, no. While we leave the good lieutenant there full of lead, let's turn now onto something full of plastic. Regulations out of Adelaide University have revealed a possible new way to combat the scourge of plastic waste. After being released on conditional parole from Western Plains Correctional Centre, our man in the ground, Wormy Alex, explains.
Ever been fed spaghetti stains in your containers? Have you ever fried in a non-stick pan? Maybe it wasn't the food that was special, but the friends we made along the way. PFAS chemicals, perfluoroalkyls, are used for things like firefighting foam and waterproof or non-stick materials. These chemicals build up inside of our bodies, giving you forever friends to take with you everywhere. They're not safe for us or for the environment, unfortunately. That's why the big brain boffins at the University of Adelaide, Australia's wormiest university, have come up with a solution. No, not the safety torch, not the safety water, rather a photocatalyst powder that breaks apart the molecular structure of PFAS and turns it into fluoride. We still need to know if the fluoride it breaks down into is safe for us and therefore a viable option, but if it is, that's exciting stuff. But there's more. Waxworms, the journalist-like creatures that have a parasitic relationship to beehives because they love to suck the beeswax out of them, may have a new use yet. They can digest polyethylene. 2,000 of them can process an entire plastic bag in 24 hours. When waxworms eat polyethylene, the bacteria in their guts, namely Acinetobacter, are able to turn that polyethylene into glycol and store some of what they eat as body fat. But if they eat too much polyethylene, they'll die! So scientists are trying to give them what they need nutritionally so that they can continue to survive long term and continue digesting humanity's mistakes on our behalf. If by chance we can't get the waxworms to live long term, we do have another way. We use the enzymes and microorganisms that live inside waxworms. This method could also work since the aforementioned Acinetobacter bacteria, after being cultured and fed polyethylene, was able to survive for over a year on only polyethylene. Well, I'm off to fill my belly up with these wormy wonders, so back to you in the studio.
But with all that and 2 bags of chips, our last struggle for the season crinkles and cuts to a close. And I'd say it's been a pretty good one too, wouldn't you, Dr. Toby?
Yes, and are we staying away from sugary drinks?
Yes, we are. Yeah. But for now, that's all from me on this show and the struggle at large. I'd like to thank all our viewers for having me here on your chosen device over these last 4 seasons. But with that, for one final time, it's good night and good luck.
Oh, the struggle. It's real.
Oh my god, I was wrong. It was Zach all along. The struggle, 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 struggle. Season 16.